Okay. I'm sorry. My instructions weren't working to go live, but I think I'm live. So thank you so much for hanging in there, guys. If anyone can just let me know that you hear me and see me in the chat, um, that would be super helpful. Um, just so I know that, yes, okay. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Andy. This was all set up for me, and I just had to follow instructions. Um, and sometimes that's hard for me. Oh, is there an echo, Rebecca, or 311 RBB? Okay, well, hopefully that's probably not something I'll be able to affect. Um, Maybe try and close. Okay, no echo from other people, so maybe try and close out and come back in. That might, the unplug and replug method tends to work. Thank you for hanging in there with me. This is something I've been meaning to do, so it's always the first few times getting started with things is trying. I did a bunch of these in the past, but the habit has left me. So basically, we were doing this because it is April 15th. And thank you guys. And it's April 15th, so taxes are due, and you might not be prepared to file your taxes yet. So, if anyone has any questions about extensions, go ahead and put them in, and I'll be sure to kind of answer them all as I go through. This live stream won't be too long. Um, because filing an extension is actually pretty easy. But there are a few concepts that are important, that are often misunderstood. And so one of the biggest concepts is that when you file an extension, you get another 6 months to file your tax return, but that does not include an extension to make payment of your taxes. And so a lot of people can be like, well, how does that make any sense? I saw a meme or a short thing someone sent me that was about taxes, and the guy was a comedian, and he was saying, in every other country in the world, it comes to tax time, and the government tells people how much they owe. And in the US, it comes to tax time, and the government says, how much do you owe us? And the guy's like, well, what if I haven't kept track? What if I don't have good records? And the government says, well, tell us what you think you owe, and then we'll check with the information we have if you're right. Um, so that is the way it is. It's part of our independence and autonomy, which gives us the ability to keep track of everything as well. And I think it's a good check. It does take kind of learning some concepts to have a system to keep everything you have going on organized, especially if you have a business. And then on the tax side, to kind of understand more about these requirements. And of course, we don't learn about this stuff in school like we all really think we should, right? But we don't. So that's how I got here, and that's that's what we're doing here. So thanks for sharing, Rebecca. I don't think okay, so it doesn't sound like anyone feel free to post any questions as we go through. So it is odd, right? We're filing an extension to file the tax return, but we don't get an extension to make payment. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, though, because of course taxes are exact, and you can make a payment when you file an extension based on just estimating. And so, as you might have seen on my channel, I have a lot of videos about Free Tax USA. And that's the one that I'm going to use today to show you how to file an extension. Um, and it's very straightforward. So, Andy, great question. Is there a penalty if you file your extension without a payment? So, as all things taxes, it's not necessarily a yes or no. There's no specific payment for not making a payment with your extension even if you owe. However, there are penalties for being late and not paying as you earn. So, for most of us business owners, this becomes a lot different than when we're a W 2 employee. Because as a W 2 employee, our employer is responsible for taking taxes out of each paycheck, including federal estimated taxes and payroll taxes, Social Security and Medicare. So those taxes get paid when we work for someone as we go, right? But with as a business owner, if we don't pay anything, then not only are we late on the April 15th due date, the last due date, but we might have been late for each quarterly payment. So instead of making payments every paycheck as a business owner, we that's where you've heard of quarterly estimated tax payments. And that's what we are required to do. Now, this is where the penalty comes in. And this is why it can be hard to make it clear and simple because what happens is the way the penalty works is, and I'm going to simplify it a little bit. I have other videos on this more specifically if you want to get into details, but as long as you've paid in the amount of taxes you had last year, so if I owed $4,000 in taxes last year, as long as I pay in 4,000 this year, or that number goes up by 15% if my income's higher than 150,000. So let's say last year I made $50,000, right? I paid in 4,000. This year, all I have to do is I made a ton of money this year. I made $1 million this year. I'm going to owe 200,000 in taxes, but there's no penalty as long as I pay in last year plus 15% because my income was over that $150,000 threshold. So as long as I pay, let's say $5,000 this year, even though I'm going to owe 200,000, I have no penalty except when I start to go past that. April 15th is the final deadline. So as business owners, we're required to make those payments quarterly. So let's say each quarter I paid, $1,250 of that 5,000. So I spread it out each quarter, paid it properly. But then when I file my taxes, when I look at my taxes and I know that I've made $1 million, right? I know I'm going to owe a lot more than 5,000. Probably about 200, 100, depending on, it totally depends on what I have going on my return, what other investments I have, other businesses, other income. It totally depends on all those factors. So when we file at the end of the year, we could owe 200,000 on April 15th and there will be no penalty. But whenever we go past April 15th, we will have a penalty. So so I hope that's I've kind of made it a little bit simple, but that's pretty much how it works. So what is the payment if you just filed the extension without the payment? So basically, it's just that the small interest rate starts accruing for penalties. And I do have a video called The Ultimate Guide to Quarterly Tax Extensions. It was one of my recent videos. So I go super detailed into the penalties and all that. I won't do that just so I don't get confusing. So the penalty, Beth, great question. I thought the tax deadline is April 18th, not the 15th. So the deadline is always the 15th of April unless it falls on a weekend or a holiday, and then it's moved to the next business day. So this year, that would be the 17th, which means taxes are due on Monday. But in celebration of the 15th, I just decided to do this video since a lot of people might decide they want to do an extension right now, even if they were maybe hoping not to. So, well, then maybe Monday's a holiday. I'm not sure, but that's how the rules are. So now your state might be a little different. States are often about a week out. So I'm in Hawaii, so their state deadline is the 20th. And your state, typically states do that where they come like a week after because your state tax return is based on your federal tax return. Is the state tax extension a separate process website from the federal site? So we have a Delaware corporation. So I think that basically what happens in most states follow federal, and some states will require you to fill out a comparable form. But typically, most states say as long as you filed your federal extension on time, you are automatically extended. So basically, this form is a little different than a lot of tax forms. It's called an automatic 6 month extension. So by filing the form on time, it's automatic. It's not the type of thing where we need to get approval, it needs to be processed. It's just an automatic extension of time to file. Um, the other thing you can do is search your state. So search Delaware state tax extension, and you should get a little FAQ that's more English than federal, and it should say if that's how they work. Free Tax USA, I think, will also, the software I'm going to show you, once you update the federal, it gives instructions for your state. Typically, that's how it works for the federal return, and I believe that's what happens for the state return. I always file an extension because I'm always busy at this time of year, and I'm just busy and I'm a procrastinator on my own things. And so I always end up filing an extension, and the states that I have to file in are all automatic following federal. Basically, unless you have kind of a different situation, which they'll have their caveats to when you need to file the extension in paper. Okay, great questions. Thank you so much for asking. Now, I'm going to share my screen. Although the button isn't where I thought it was. They are always changing everything, and I guess it's my own fault for not doing this more to know. Stay on top of stuff. Let's see. Share. Thanks, Cam. Yes, it sounds like someone was getting an echo, but not everyone. Let's see. Okay. I guess they took away screen share, so I won't be sharing my screen. Bummer. Okay. That's okay. I find it hard to believe, but okay. I guess I can't share my screen. Weird. Okay, well, I'll just talk us through it then. Basically, Free Tax USA, I'm going to post it right in the comments. It's actually free for federal. It costs nothing to file your extension. And you can sign up. So a lot of people get nervous about signing up with the software. I just put the link in the chat. A lot of people get nervous, like it starts something. It doesn't start anything. So you can create an account in Free Tax USA. You can answer questions. You can play with it until you go to file and submit. Nothing happens. So basically, my first recommendation with Free Tax USA, because of that amount that you want to know, do I owe taxes? It's actually on the form. Here, I'll put a copy of the extension form in the chat as well. IRS 2022 tax extension. So you can see it's very simple. It takes a few minutes in Free Tax USA. It's nothing complicated. It's form 4868. 8. I never remember that one. And basically in Free Tax USA, we're going to answer a few questions. And what I recommend with Free Tax USA is actually going through all of the questions um, in the software, right? Because as you go through and answer all the questions, even if you don't know for sure your exact amounts, let's take business income, right? You can easily go in and add your business or update it if you used this before and just put it in a number, 100,000, whatever rough, estimates you have, you can put those rough estimates into the software and be sure to fill out the first section with your name, your dependents, your marital status, because that's going to affect your taxes. So once you do that, I recommend doing that first because that's going to give you a rough idea of how much money you do owe, so that you have some idea. So you're not just putting it off until the next deadline, which is in 6 months. So, yes, this is recorded, no worries. So you want to update the software. That's the easiest thing to do. We do have a program where I have spreadsheet templates where you can calculate this throughout the year. But if you're just trying to file the extension at this time, and the spreadsheet's an estimate, right? So doing the software can be helpful as well as just a check to make sure you're on the right path. And you can just answer the questions and just be sure that you go back through everything when you get your final numbers and put those in. But I highly recommend doing this if you are avoidant about the taxes. I recommend doing this because what it does is it helps you get a realistic number versus in your head kind of being overwhelmed by how much your taxes might be. Oftentimes, people's taxes are not nearly as high as they think they are because although we talk about these tax brackets and percentages, part of the reason tax rates keep going up is because of all the complexity and deductions and just the nature of the calculation of what is our taxes. And so, because of that, that's part of the reason those rates are higher. We don't actually pay those rates on every dollar we earn. So keep that in mind. I won't go into more detail, but just keep that in mind that you're not actually paying 40% even if you're in that bracket. So that's why it's helpful to get those numbers in there, get an idea of where you are. I mean, you can put in some estimates and go through, answer the questions, your name, your family, your dependents, if you have any of that, address, state, and then pop in, your income and expenses for whatever you have, and just go through. Let the software prompt you to remember things that went on. I forgot that I have an EV vehicle last year, and I had to amend my return, which was a pleasant surprise. Certainly to realize that had been forgotten in the rush last year. So because that's on my personal side. So, but the point is let it prompt you and remember everything that you have going on. Performance possibilities. Hi, Steve. Welcome. Yes. I am from New Hampshire, that's for sure. I've been in Hawaii a long time, but from New Hampshire. Okay, so Free Tax USA, I have those links in the chat, the Free Tax USA link and the extension form that you can fill out in Free Tax USA, which is very straightforward. That's why I was talking about going through the software, because as you go through the software, and answer the questions and the address, all of that is going to go on the form automatically. If you look on that 4868 form, you'll see on the part 2, it says individual income tax, estimate of total tax liability for 2022. So that will automatically, that's a number that you can get from the software by entering and getting a feel of where you're at, even if you don't have your final numbers. Or, how big of a deal is it? It's really for you. They're not going to check. You can go ahead and put zero total payments. You could just zero it. It's not going to, you're not going to be graded on how well you did on the extension estimate. So it's just for you to know so that you can get those taxes in, so that you know how much you need to pay. So keep that in mind. It's not like this is going to be ticked and tied. You're going to owe the amount you owe, and you know, and that's what you're going to owe no matter what. The only thing is, like, do you want to find out right now where you stand? Which is what this form is trying to encourage us to do, right? Is to get an idea of where we stand, even if we don't have the perfect numbers, even if we don't have the final numbers. So, part two, line four is estimate of total tax liability for 2022. Line five is total 2022 payments. So that means if you made quarterly estimated payments, or if you or a spouse have W 2 income and you had estimated taxes withheld, which you have to, that's that number. The total of all payments you made, including any of your or spouse W 2, plus any business quarterly tax payments you made. Or even if you, say, did a retirement withdrawal and you had taxes withheld, any federal estimated tax payments you made go towards what you owe on your personal income tax return. And that's, of course, why most of our businesses are flow through, right? So even if you're in a partnership or multi-member LLC, you get a Schedule K1, which then you put in to your personal return, and all of that nets together your entire personal situation to come up with your 1040 personal income tax return. So they just take on line four, estimate total tax liability, minus line five, 2022 payments, and that gives you your balance due, you know. And then line seven, you can say the amount you're paying with the extension. And it can be zero. It's just they are going to start accruing their penalties. Penalties and interest they aren't huge for this. The details are, like all things taxes, very cumbersome. And like I said, I have that quarterly tax estimate video, which goes into the details of the penalties. So I won't go, but they're fairly small. So I wouldn't freak out. It's not like a credit card where it's 20%. They're fairly small, and they have cutoffs and maximums. But it obviously adds up. And the goal is to avoid paying any fines and penalties and interest, right? Who wants to pay that? But if you're in that situation at the moment, just one foot in front of the other, get it done as soon as possible. And like I said, I really think that updating the free Tax USA software, even if you're working with an accountant, even if you're just doing it yourself, if you're having trouble kind of getting it done for the deadline, updating that to see, just to get the number. The unknown makes us we can use our imagination more. When we get a solid number, even if it is a lot, at least the sooner the sooner you can start working to rectify it. So keep that in mind. And let's see, the last two lines are just check here if you were out of the country and a U.S. resident, blah, blah, blah. The last two are just about non-residents. So that's it. That's all that's on the extension. And Free Tax USA will submit it for you automatically, virtually. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I was going to walk through the software, so I'm trying to think about everything I was going to show in there, but let me check out your payments here. Okay, is Free Tax USA the government's version of TurboTax? No. So no, Free Tax USA is TurboTax. It's exactly like TurboTax. No affiliation with the government at all. It's just free. So I have to be careful not to get going on this, but TurboTax is a $1 billion profit company. They make so much money. And part of the program that really got them started was this concept of free e-file, that the government created this program to encourage private sector to make tools for people to file their own taxes. Free Tax USA has stuck to that program and they've actually removed the income limitation. So, regardless of how much money you make, you can free file Fed. They make some money. They charge for doing an amended return, something that doesn't even compare to free TurboTax. They charge, like, it used to be, depending on the time of year, $6.99 to $15. So very affordable. And same thing with the states. TurboTax is substantially more expensive than that. And what happens in TurboTax is they use the free file as their advertising to pull people in, and then they force people to upgrade by you answer the questions in it to find out if you qualify for these different write-offs, which they know that a lot of people don't, but to find out, you upgrade your software and you can't downgrade. And so, I found TurboTax to be fairly manipulative and a very profitable company. I've worked for them. And I don't recommend them. Now, they might be good in some instances. Look, if you're happy with them, I'm not trying to convince you out of them. Wherever you're happy doing your taxes, it's, a relatively small amount of money. But Free Tax USA is in my opinion, fairly easy. I'll say the only time that TurboTax, people really like to stick in TurboTax is if you do have a lot of stock transactions. TurboTax is fairly good. I think it's their third level tier, is fairly good at handling some more complicated stock transactions. But generally, you're going to need to really understand those anyways for it to not be super confusing, or just use a tax preparer. So, but there is that situation. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't have really complicated stuff, Free Tax USA is just actually free and they just stuck to the program. And I'm sure, because think about it, what an industry, right? Taxes. Everyone has to do it. People like to do it themselves, and cheaper, and just do it on your computer. So everyone files taxes. So that gives you this huge market. So, yeah, there's a lot of money to be made, even though they're doing it in a more ethically cheaper way. So, Art Gal, will you get a refund if you overpay when sending in a quarterly payment? Yes, yes. So when you file that 1040 tax return, that's what we're reconciling. We're reconciling all of your payments, whether some were through W-2 wages, some are through your business quarterly estimated tax payments. We're adding up all your payments and we're calculating exactly what you owe. And because we have marginal tax rates and because we have such a complicated tax system, that's why we need this final reconciliation. And that's why it's not likely that anyone ever paid in exactly what they owe. There's always a little bit of a discrepancy as far as either you owe a little bit or they owe you a little bit, and you will 100% get it back. Generally, the concept is you would rather owe a little bit than get a refund, because you don't want to give a tax-free loan to the government. However, while that's, the most logical, rational based mentality, a lot of times people just do not want to owe at the end of the year. And so, it's whatever is better for you, whatever feels better to you. If you prefer to maybe make some overpayments because you have the money and you can pay it in and then get a refund, just like when we're employees. And the idea is that when you're an employee, you have less ability, like, to pay in if you end up owing. And so people would rather get a refund, right? Because it's kind of like a savings bank and you get a little refund and you don't risk owing. That's where those numbers come in: 0, 1, 2 on our W-4 when you get a job. It's like, how risky do you want to be? Like, do you want to be sure you're going to get a refund, or do you want to take more risk and be more on that line of exactly what you owe? 311, so helpful. Awesome. Let's see. Dennis, I have an LLC plus other income. I got 4,000 back last year, my startup year. But this year I owe 3,000, which I didn't expect. I didn't make any quarterly payments this year. Am I in the IRS doghouse? Um, Let me think. So, first of all, just because you got a refund last year, when it comes to calculating, great question. When it comes to calculating, remember how I said if I paid 4,000 in taxes last year and I made $1 million this year, I only still have to pay in five to avoid a penalty. That has nothing to do with what my refund was last year. That 4,000 comes from the tax return. If you look at your form 1140 for last year and you look at taxes, um, you might have still paid taxes. I don't know. If all you had was the business and I guess you were in a loss, then you might not. But let's say you had W 2 income or a spouse had W 2 income. Um, you might have actually paid taxes, right? Even though you got 4,000 back, you might have paid. Now, if you had a big loss from your business, maybe you got it all back and you didn't pay, but it's just worth mentioning that you don't want to base it on whether you had a refund or a payment. You want to base it on what the tax return said your total tax was. That line is literally labeled. If you look at your 1040, the last page of 1040, page 2, it'll say total tax. And then it goes into payments. And so that's the amount that you want to compare to avoid a payment when you're making payments this year. So that probably doesn't apply to you as I'm thinking about it if you probably had a loss, but just wanted to point that out. So you want to get the payment in as soon as possible. And then what will happen is the IRS will send you, if you owe fees, if you have some interest or penalty to pay, they'll send you a form, but you do want to pay it as soon as possible. So you want to, and even if you're filing an extension, you can just make that payment if that's about what you think you'll owe. So no doghouse, Dennis, don't worry. But and it's yeah, you know, all any penalty and interest is based on the amount. So when you're dealing with smaller amounts, it's very, as long as you get it in, you do want to get it in as soon as possible. Okay, performance possibilities. I don't see any links. Okay, did anyone get my links? I'm going to do them again. This one is freetaxusa.com. And then the other one we were looking at was for the extension form. Let's see, Art Girl. Will you get a refund? Yes. Andy. Oh, sorry, I scrolled up. Is this the same for sole proprietor? So great question, 311. So sole proprietor or single member LLC, you'll file your business taxes with your personal. So the business itself doesn't pay its own taxes. It's all done with your personal. And so you can do all of that in Free Tax USA. If you have any other type of business, the business files its return first and then gives you forms that you need to put into Free Tax USA for your personal return. And so for other types of businesses, I do recommend having someone prepare the return generally. But if you still want to do your personal yourself, that's a good way to stay on top of it and know that you understand it, because you'll get that Schedule K1 or W2 or W2 and be able to enter those into the software and make sure you understand, what your business is reporting to you. Okay, what about H&R Block? H&R Block is good. They're primarily in person, and I believe they kind of moved away from their online software. They're kind of an in-between one. TurboTax is the most expensive. Then comes the H&R Blocks and Tax Act. And if you have a business return, you have to use one of those softwares. They haven't made business returns like they've made filing personal tax returns really easy through these softwares like TurboTax and Free Tax USA. They have not done that with the business returns. And business returns are incredibly more complicated they're just more in the tax language. It's less intuitive to like sit down and fill out a form. So what I tell people, I do help people in my Master Your Accounting and Taxes program with that, but I'm very upfront that it's never going to be clear. So, like it's never going to totally make sense. A lot of tax preparers that might do individual returns won't even do separate business returns. You actually have to have an enrolled agent license or CPA to file business returns, whereas you don't need that for individual personal returns. So, okay, last one here. Cam, I filed a personal tax extension just now. Awesome. How do I file a corporate extension? Do I just start over and you? No. So, corporate extension, search online, corporation tax extension, IRS. And up will come. And be careful, scroll all the way down until you see IRS. So there's a lot of sponsored stuff that will come up when you search for tax forms, but just look for the IRS. And that's why I always include IRS in my search so that you don't accidentally end up on other sites. And here is the 7004 extension for the corporation. I'm going to put the link in. Yeah, so all business returns are due March 15th. And so their extension brings you to September 15th. And then that's why our personal returns are due a month later, is so that because we got to get those filed first. But it's worth still filing it. You didn't know, you're doing it now. Great. It's good. Okay, Dennis, you like our H&R Block? Great. And that's what, I tell people, if you have something that's working, that's great. It's only if you're not happy with something, because so much of our experience has to do with the people involved. You might have a great person you like at H&R Block, or you just have a great H&R Block where you like the people there, and so perfect. You don't want to change something if you have stuff working. It's just when people are having trouble finding something or they really want to do it themselves. I have a lot. I used to do a lot of one-on-one stuff with people, and accounting and projects, and I'd get a lot of people who wanted to go from doing taxes with a tax preparer to doing it themselves, and it's a great experience. They got to learn a lot about it, but oftentimes they're like, I'd rather not deal with the software. But then at least you have a greater appreciation for what a tax person's actually doing, because a lot of times people are like, wait, why aren't they like going through my bank statements and getting the numbers for me, But a tax preparer, when you make a payment for tax preparation, they're dealing with the software for you. So you don't have to deal with it. And it is a hassle, it's a hassle. It's a whole other thing, but you don't have appreciation for that unless you've gone through that hassle. And so that's where people kind of miss out on even learning what they're supposed to have in case they're ever audited, or learning how to keep track of everything that they have going on. So let's see. Let me just adjust a few other things. I meant that I use HR. Oh, the online software. Cool. Yes. Can you recommend some good Excel spreadsheets for monthly or quarterly expense tracking? Yes, I can. So basically, I have a few things I can tell you about. One, I give away a free worksheet. It is just a worksheet with a basic income statement, and you can pop in your income numbers and your expense numbers. That spreadsheet also has a bit of a quarterly tax estimate to it, but it's a very basic one. It's not kind of the full picture. So templates, it's hard to cover everything, right? Because it's so huge, our tax system. But we've built out, I have a program I started a few years ago called Master Your Accounting and Taxes, and it's e-course program with video tutorials and checklist cheat sheets to guide you through everything. And that program includes all of our accounting spreadsheets, which when I initially started this course, it was just to help answer questions, guide people, but we ended up tweaking the free spreadsheet template so much that it became a full accounting spreadsheet. And we have videos about this on our YouTube. So that is a paid program that we have that we're currently enrolling for May and June. So if you want to check that out, definitely head over to my website and check out the channel. There's other videos that go through it. Now, and if you want to make your own spreadsheet, you can still check out some of those spreadsheet videos I have on my channel. And there's the free one as well. And I can give you the link for the free one. Here it is. Thank you, Dennis. Yes, Dennis is in the Master Your Accounting and Taxes program. And yeah, and basically, a lot of times people are like, well, is it going to teach me how to file my taxes for free? And the answer to that is kind of no, but yes, in the way that people are often thinking about it, because a lot of being able to file your taxes is just all the information that you need, as well as, the requirements for taxes. So your accounting record is your starting point for taxes. All the income, every expense related to your business, income and expenses. So you've got to be tracking all that. And then, of course, the whole industry of accounting is that we can kind of tick and tie that to make sure everything is covered. And that's where our spreadsheet template comes in. That's for LLCs and separate businesses. Sole proprietors use it as well. So it really just depends how much you have going on. The free worksheet is just that. It's a worksheet. It's one worksheet for your accounting records, whereas our course spreadsheet is an entire spreadsheet that really replaces accounting software like QuickBooks, because you're going to get all the reports and you get to track every transaction. You have accounts just like in accounting software. So it's a much more robust accounting system. Now, technically, that's required for many people, so the worksheet is kind of more of a getting by option if you really have only a few things going on. But some people make use of it, and if you don't have time to invest in it, you just want something, check it out. Okay, so I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. So for sole proprietors, so for sole proprietor or single member LLC, there is no quarterly taxes then. Great question. I'm so glad you asked that. So there is only one business type that pays taxes. That's the corporation. Right now, it's paying a flat 21% tax rate. Every other type of business doesn't pay taxes. This is a general rule. It's taxes, so there's a million exceptions and caveats and details and blah, blah, right? But the basic is that none of the other business types actually pay income tax. They flow through to the owners. Even if I just have a job, if I will owe taxes at the end of the year, then I needed to pay quarterly estimated taxes. So it's a catch-all, right? For quarterly estimated taxes, it applies to corporations and it applies to individuals because we're the only two people actually paying taxes. All other business types are flow-through. So that's why sole proprietor, single member LLC, they're taxed on our personal tax return. It's called Schedule C. And you'll see in the Free Tax USA software, they ask you all about your business income and expenses. That's what that's referring to. If you have any other type of business, multi-member LLC, partnership, S corporation, you'll file a separate business tax return, which are due March 15th or extended to September 15th. You'll receive a Schedule K1 with your share of the business activity that you put on your quarterly estimate or your tax return. So let me know if that answers your question. It's all flowing through to me as an owner, and then I combine all my income and expenses, my spouse's stuff, whatever I have going on, I combine it all on my tax return to come up with my taxes. um Good question. You can let me know if I answered it or if you need any more clarity. um Christina, great, thank you. um Oh, sorry, Rebecca. Yes, it's like understanding the why behind the questions on the forms. Yes, I think you were commenting on something I was saying. Christina, Free Tax USA, what to do after signing up? Not exactly sure. So once you sign up, it's going to push you into questions, answering questions. And you know what? I have two more videos. So I have a bunch of Free Tax USA tutorials. Uh, Oops, sorry, I started opening me. Um, I'll grab you a few links and then wrap up. So if there's any other questions, just go ahead and pop them in. Um, my channel. So I actually have an entire playlist. Um, You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you the link of my channel. And if you just scroll down, you'll see there's recent videos, popular videos, and then how to file taxes online DIY for free. And this one takes you step by step through setting up the software. Let's see, step by step tutorial file. I think this is the video. And so this video will walk you through all those initial questions, and you can just kind of see it, before you do it to kind of know what's happening. Oh, there's TurboTax advertising on my videos. I keep meaning to turn off advertisements and stop doing that, but one video in, and then also, if you go to my channel and you scroll down, you'll see there's a whole playlist about Free Tax USA and other videos for setting up your business, and it just walks you through it. But that first video will probably really help you get going. Did you look at mine or answer it before I got on? Don't have the funds to pay with my extension potentially. That's okay. So here's the thing. If you can't pay, you can set up a payment plan with the IRS. And so, you want to do that as soon as possible. Sometimes people want to take a few months and they're just going to file and pay late. And, that's okay. They're not going to arrest you or anything. The most important thing is that you get it filed by the due date and get your payment in. But if you are really underwater, then you want to set up a payment plan so that you're addressing it, because that will stop certain penalties from accruing once you get into a payment plan. And you'll just feel better about it. You won't have it weighing over you. So here, I'll get that link. Set up. You can search like set up a payment plan at the IRS. And as always, be wary of sponsored first links. Payment plan installment agreements. And if you have any questions, so this video will be up after we end here. You can post any questions you end up running into, and I'll use those for other topics. Is Free Tax USA secure? They do require a social security number. So they require the social security number because the IRS requires the social security number on your forms. So that's why they're asking for that, so that they can fill out your forms. But that's it. Yes, very secure. They're listed with the IRS. They're one of the IRS recommended filers, just like TurboTax is on their list, all the big ones. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking at first, but here's what I tell myself. Anyone who wants my social security number and all my information, like, they can get it. So, we're not responsible for not to say that it's, Not to say that you shouldn't be careful. You should, because there's all sorts of scams out there that, call people and try and get people's social security numbers. So it's a perfectly legitimate question. But with something like Free Tax USA, yeah, it's totally fine. And because I'm in the industry and because I use it, because I know the industry, I know this. So I try to assure people that, it's fine on these platforms like TurboTax and Free Tax USA. But it's perfectly reasonable question, Andy. So I understand, and you're right to ask, because you never know. There's a lot of stuff out there. So um 311, what was not clear, why would someone who was W-2 need to pay quarterly taxes? So the point is, they might have filled out their W-4 and put 9 exclusions. The withholding is based on what you told the company, or let's say the company made a mistake and didn't withhold anything. Guess what? Still on you. It's still on you to know that you've paid your taxes each quarter. So it's not a common situation, but it's the rule. The rule is now of course someone might have had rental income, or maybe they cashed out an IRA, or they might have had something else going on. And so if you will owe, basically every person is required to make quarterly tax payments if they owe. The IRS is good with their language like that. Okay, Rebecca, I believe they would be in accounts receivable and not counted as income yet, which I suppose is to decrease your tax liability. I only took one accounting class. So I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to. Sorry, I guess maybe I missed a little bit, but generally your cash basis, which means that you're just going to report the income you earned, income received during the year. And by the way, received means you have access to it. So I know someone had asked me before, like, oh, people paid my Venmo, but I didn't take it out, so I'm not reporting it this year. But it's your Venmo. So you had access to the money, so you don't get to do that, right? That's the whole point of cash and accrual method, is we have a systematic way of accounting for the money so that you can't kind of decide that I'm not going to pay taxes on this and that sort of thing. So how do you fill out the extension though? So in Free Tax USA, you can, okay, thanks, Rebecca. In Free Tax USA, you can file an extension. And I was going to show this, but I'm a little stuck to not be able to do that now since I can't share my screen. But right when you log in, so this time of year, it should actually pop up and say, do you want to file an extension? And it's just one of the tabs on the top. Fill out if funds are short. So you can just, let me see, I'll post, I think they have a, okay. Here it is. So you go to the personal, there's a personal tab, and you'll select 2022 extension and then start your 2022 extension, and it'll fill you out from there. So here, I'll give you this. So once you log in, you should see a personal tab and you can follow these instructions. I just put that link in the chat. Okay, last question here and we'll close out. 311, watching with family, cousin's question. What software is good for people who make income from stocks? Well, that was what I said was the one exception I would give TurboTax, is that TurboTax does have a pretty robust for some certain situations, like, short sales. And there are some situations where TurboTax does accommodate kind of more complex stock sales and stock activity. So if you're already, if you like, if you know you have that stuff, the third, I think it's the investment version of, it's not the business one, but the one before that has that. Now, but Free Tax USA handles stock sales and gains and losses. So if you have some, dividend stuff, interest, and stock sales, basic sales, um, Free Tax USA does it as well. So what you might do is update Free Tax USA. So the great thing about these softwares, you can go in, update your account, and you don't pay until you file. So you can update Free Tax USA and TurboTax. Now, don't take the cheapest one. You want to figure out why there's a difference. If you end up with a difference, you want to figure that out. If you were able to enter more specific stock details in TurboTax than you were in Free Tax USA, could end up with a higher amount, but it might be more correct. So that's something you got to weigh. But most people with stock sales, just basic stock sales, some 1099 stuff from the investments, you can do that fine in Free Tax USA. So, okay. I think I got everything. I'm sorry if I missed anyone's questions, but we're on the hour mark, although I was a little late. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. 311. I loved 311 when I was younger. That refers to the band. But anyways, okay, everyone. Well, good luck with tax season. I know it's super stressful. And I hope you all have a great day. Get your extension filed if nothing else. And I'll see you on the channel soon or in my courses. So, okay, talk to you soon. Bye, everyone. Thanks, guys. I know it was quick, Rebecca. It feels quick for me. I presume it's not quick for you guys, but okay, awesome. Good, Judith. Great. Thanks for sharing. Okay, everyone. Have a great Saturday, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.